in to New Connection Radio, featuring new releases for conscious living. I'm your host, Vicki Thompson. Today I'd like to welcome to New Connection Radio Victoria Holt, who is the author of Spiritual Facelift, 7 Natural Steps to Inner and Outer Health and Beauty. Victoria, welcome to New Connection Radio.
Hi, Vicki. Thank you so much for inviting me on to your show.
Well, I was really intrigued by your book. What inspired you to write Spiritual Facelift?
Well, I think what really first started was just looking at our society in general. It's such a sort of materialistic, superficial society where so many people are focused on the body, are advertising. It's really creating low self-esteem in people, and billions of dollars are being spent on plastic surgery and this obsession with staying young and physically perfect. And people are spending all of this money, but still underneath they're not happy, they're not satisfied. Their self-esteem is low and they're feeling depressed, and I just really felt that there was a need to take at that audience who, wants to stay young and healthy, but show them an alternative route to how you could sort of apply spiritual practices that can truly transform your whole appearance, but in a natural way, and at the same time try and get some spiritual truths to people who wouldn't normally sort of access them because they're so immersed in this superficial world. In fact, another reason I wrote the book was because of watching Real Housewives of Orange County. I have a lot to thank for those women because I was fascinated with here are attractive women, but they were physically obsessed and very unhappy, and I just felt that there was a need for a book, for people who are already interested in spirituality and spiritual truths and wanted to have a book that could help guide their mind, body and soul and transform their life, but also reach a broader audience as well, such as the Real Housewives.
Right. Well, what does it mean to have a spiritual facelift? And it sounds like it can work on your inner self. Does it also affect your outer beauty as well?
Well, it does. What I noticed, I spent a lot of time working and being trained by many of the world's spiritual leaders. And when I first met them, they radiated out such an amazing energy. They seemed to have boundless amounts of energy, but they also looked very young and extremely beautiful. I felt more beautiful than the supermodels I was seeing in the magazines. And then as I started to do a very deep spiritual practice and sort of purification of my mind, body and soul, my appearance was transforming as well. I mean, I'm 46 years of age, but I look like I'm in my 30s. It really starts to, when you do this process, you seem to have an inner light begin to shine from the inside out, and that's what people are seeing. I always have people stop me and say, "Oh, wow, your eyes," or something, like draws them in, and I tell them it's my soul. It's my soul that's radiating out. It's my energy. I've kind of cleansed and purified and done this sort of program, and it does transform you. But when I talk about having a spiritual facelift, I don't just talk about how it can transform your body. The book actually teaches us how to give every area of our life a facelift, a sort of a makeover, a do-over, and just uplift your life in every single area, including your home, your relationships. But it does also, this program, it really helps you tap into the fountain of youth and a sort of a natural beauty that radiates out, that people, it sort of magnetizes people to you. And everyone has that. It's just we've sort of degraded our souls, which has affected the energy of the body. And we've become sort of denser and darker than our natural state. So what I do is help people take people back to their natural essence. And it's amazing how it transforms your appearance.
Well, you have an interesting process in your book. It's called energetic liposuction. How does that work?
Well, that is my favorite. That's one of my favorite subjects, actually, and the favorite chapters in the book, because what it talks about really is it's all about our emotions. We're actually emotional beings. But the problem is we've been taught to be ashamed of our emotions and to numb ourselves from our emotions and to avoid our emotions. And in fact, many spiritual practices are kind of talking about and teaching the detunement of emotions, where we kind of sort of lift ourselves above them and avoid them. The problem is with our more painful emotions I don't even like to use the word negative, really, because I have a different relationship now to emotions, because we are emotional beings. They're our spiritual guide. And if we ignore them or avoid them, then we tend to become lost. We become unhealthy, and we also put on weight. And many people, when they're younger, they go through some form of trauma, and they tend to sort of lift up out of their body. They sort of take a sharp breath in of like trauma. They sort of go, and then stay there for the rest of their lives. And they kind of start to sort of, they cut themselves off at the waist, really. And what we do is we suppress these denser, darker, negative emotions. They're actually heavier energetically than the sort of the happier, more joyful emotions that are full of love. And so what I teach in one of the chapters is this form of energetic liposuction, where you literally clear the emotions away. And it does make your body lighter, because it makes your energy field lighter. And I teach people to actually access the emotions and go into the pain and change your relationship to the pain and realize that the pain is not going to last. It's almost like having a thorn in your foot, and you're walking around and it's painful and sore. If you only take a moment to actually pull that thorn out, then the foot will heal. And while you're pulling the thorn out, it feels very painful, but it does ease the pain. And so what I teach is to go into that emotion and to sort of go down into the body rather than up and out, to actually feel and release the emotions. And when you clear these deeper, darker emotions and move back into your body, it's amazing how it transforms your energy field and makes you light. It literally makes you lighter. Our weight is matter, energy transformed into matter, and the denser it gets with darker emotions, the heavier we get. Does that make sense?
It does. And, it was interesting as I was looking through the book, you were talking about, as you do your work, that you tend to take on that youthful-looking appearance. So can you share how you can achieve, looking younger through energy work?
Well, it's about what I just talked about clearing these denser emotions. They literally get frozen in the soul, and we start absorbing emotions from when we are actually in our mother's womb. Children absorb their parents' suppressed negative emotions or anything in their environment. And if they're not allowed to process and release them, and it's when we see children and they're crying, that's a natural process they're doing. They instantaneously and shame-free grieve. And they clear and purify the soul and keep the energy field very pure. But then we teach children that they mustn't do that. We punish them if they cry. And so we start to suppress that as adults, and which creates all this sort of density and darkness. Well, if you can reverse that by clearing, going back in. And I also teach people about how very important it is to live in truth. Because if you speak the truth at all times, you actually not only allow these emotions to come bubbling up to the surface that you can then release and purify your field, but you also give other people the opportunity to clear their emotions when they hear you speak the truth. The problem is most of us do not speak the truth. We become very frightened of that. It's something that I've had to deal with. This has been one of my most difficult areas in my own practice. I mean, I come from England, where people tend not to speak the truth about how they feel emotionally. It's that sort of stiff upper British lip that they have. And so I've had a lot of fear around that, fear that I will offend people, fear that I'm not being polite, fear that, I'm being selfish. But now I've worked my way through that, and I really do take pleasure now in speaking emotional truth at all times and aligning myself with what I believe divine truth and adjusting my life accordingly so everything can flow with grace and love and beauty. But before you do that, you have to get through this process of clearing and releasing. Then, of course, with our diet and everything, there's a purification, and the book gives a lot of examples of how to purify your energy field, because we have to look at food as energy as well. So everything we put in, we need to look at it as energy. Is this light energy we're putting in? Is it nearest the sun and nature? Or is it denser, darker energy, dead energy that we're putting into our body? And this also affects, the way we look. So I kind of work both spiritually and physically, giving sort of practical tools as well.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Victoria.
It's my absolute pleasure.
Join us next time on New Connection Radio, your source for conscious living.